What's up, everybody? It's Derek here, your host for today's podcast, here with Dog Media, and we're launching this episode. It's episode 1 now. We're gonna be talking a little bit about fantasy football, NFL in general. We're gonna throw in some other sports podcasts. We're gonna have some local athletes, high school athletes come in and talk to you guys from the West Texas area. We're hoping to get some exposure over here. I know a lot of people don't think West Texas is that good with sports. We're not really in the conversation when it comes to elite talent. People really consider that to be, the DFW, Houston area, Austin even. But we're going to try to get some athletes out there. We're going to try to help them get some exposure, help them get to the next level. We'll see. We'll see what the future holds. This is going to be a fun podcast. I'm excited to share it with you guys. Uh, yeah, let's just get straight into it. So, with this podcast, I'm really looking to uh, expand my knowledge and also share my knowledge of fantasy football. Just a little bit of background about me. Grew up in West Texas, born and raised here, moved off to Dallas and lived there for a few years. I'm a huge Eagles fan if you couldn't already tell. But yeah, I've been playing fantasy football for this is going on 12 years now. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll put up my team here in my league that I'm in, that I've been in for the past, I guess it's 9 years. This is the ninth year. My team will be up on the screen right here, so that y'all can see it. Tell me what y'all think. Tell me what y'all like, what y'all don't like. But as far as that goes, we're gonna get into some news as of today. We I'm not sure if y'all have heard, but Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook will both play Week 1. Robert Saleh said that they were gonna use Breece Hall smartly. A little bit of implications, fantasy implications. Look, if you drafted Breece Hall, you spent a third or fourth round pick most likely on him. He was going around the fourth round in the ADP. In ADP, he was going around the fourth round in PPR leagues. I think he went round 5 in my league, but that's just because people were wary of taking him. Cooper Kupp is going to be out week 1, Sean McVay said, with the hamstring injury. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets placed on the IR. He's just kind of right there. I mean, he's over the threshold of age that I consider he's going to start regressing. I know wide receivers regress a little bit slower, but I think that a hamstring injury for someone at his age is going to be vital this season. Um, if you drafted him early, if you drafted early, you most likely spent a first round pick. So that's tough news. I would look to pivot. Van Jefferson is expected to be the wide receiver number 1. I don't like it. I don't like it. That's not a player that I'm really gunning for. We drafted late. We already had the Cooper Kupp news, so he went in the 7th round, I believe, in our draft, and he was still the guy who took him. He was still his number 1 wide receiver. He went running back heavy, and I'm not gunning to find Van Jefferson on waivers. I'm really not. I know if you took Cooper Kupp, you don't have a pivot option, but wide receiver is a very deep position, and I feel like you can find some other value there. If you have to start someone on the Rams, I would start Tyler Higbee. People are sleeping on him. Everybody's talking about Puka Nacua or Van Jefferson, but I really like the Tyler Higbee start. I think he's going to be a vital target, vital piece of this offense this week. He's Whenever Cooper Kupp was out last year, he was Matt Stafford's number 1 target. I don't know if that's going to be the case this year. It remains to be seen. A lot of questions still circulating around that offense in terms of running backs. Is it going to be Cam Akers? Has to be, right? Kyron Williams is in the mix. I don't expect him to have a big role week 1, but he might be someone that can take over that backfield late in the season. Some other news, Darren Waller is listed as questionable with the hamstring injury as well. I'm not concerned about him missing this week, but just something to monitor. Romeo Doubs listed with the hamstring injury, questionable. Him and Christian Watson were both been on the injury report this week. With that being said, Christian Watson is out. Someone I have rostered right now. I drafted Romeo Doubs, but I dropped him immediately for Jaden Reed. I think Jaden Reed is a sleeper candidate this year, and with Watson being out week 1, look for Jayden Reed to make an impact. Maybe a DFS throw. Maybe if you're in a 12, 14 team deep league, you throw in Jayden Reed as a flex option. Could get you some sleeper points this week. Kittle is officially listed as questionable as well with the groin injury. Those are tough to come back from. Odell had an ankle injury in practice. Doesn't seem to be too severe. He was juggling soccer balls as if he's a soccer player. Look, I'm staying away from Odell Beckham in all my drafts. In all DFSs, it may come back to bite me, but coming off of 2 torn ACLs, now he has an ankle injury on a team that may be pass heavy this year with Todd Monken. I don't think so. I think Lamar is still going to be the primary weapon. He's going to use his legs, and when he uses his arm, it's going to go to Zay Flowers, and it's going to go to Mark Andrews. J.K. Dobbins, staying away from him. I know a lot of people are high on him. I'm not. Ramondre Stevenson missed practice on Friday. Not due to injury. He is expected to play. And yeah, that's all the news that I have as of right now. Unless we get some breaking news during this episode, I will let y'all know. So, moving on to the post game yesterday. If you watched the game, you saw Travis Kelce did not play. He was out. It was the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions ended up holding on to win 21-20 in a stunner. Nobody expected that. I know some people in my pick'em group actually picked the Detroit Lions. I don't know if they actually believed that they would win, but it was a good pick nonetheless. The spread was KC minus 6.5 at home. So the Lions covered that spread, ended up winning. Crazy game. Mahomes, is he in a bit of mayhem here? Let's talk about Patrick Mahomes. Let's talk about him for a minute. League reigning MVP, Super Bowl MVP. He comes out, and when he lost Tyreek Hill, everyone said, oh, Mahomes is going to take a step back. Mahomes isn't going to be that good. He wins an MVP. He leads the league in passing yards. What is there to say negative about Mahomes? Interceptions? Guess you could say threw too many interceptions last year. But not really, right? What is the negative part of Mahomes' game? A lot of people, his family, whatever. I'm talking about football specific. What is there to say negative about him? It'll take you a while to come up with the reason. However, you still can't come up with the reason. Even though they lost to the Lions, you can't even pin it on the quarterback. Yeah, he had one interception. It turned out to be a pick six. But if you actually watch the play, it hit Kadarius Toney right in the hands. I mean, right in the hands. He had it right here. Perfectly placed ball. Bounced off his hands into the defender's hands. Rookie Brian Branch takes it for a touchdown. Unbelievable. Mahomes was their leading rusher last night as well, with 6 carries for 45 yards. Yeah, Isaiah Pacheco disappeared. Nothing. Isaiah McKinnon, or why did I say Jerick McKinnon? I'm thinking of Isaiah Pacheco. Jerick McKinnon disappeared. Don't even get me started on CEH. I'm not even going to talk about it. Mahomes needs Kelce. He needs him back ASAP. If Kelce ends up missing extended time this season, if he misses next week, the week after, this Chiefs offense is going to be abysmal. It's going to be tough to watch. It's going to be rely on Mahomes' legs and his ability to just make magic happen. Kadarius Toney, 1 catch, 1 yard on 5 targets. 1 yard. This is a guy they traded for. They believed in. They thought that he was going to come in and be automatic wide receiver number 1. That's not happening. That's not evident. Mahomes isn't going to trust Kadarius Toney going forward. I don't think that he is a viable fantasy option at all. I think you need to look, if you have to have a Kansas City wide receiver, you look MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, or you look Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice had, two receptions yesterday? I mean, but he had the touchdown. He was reliable. What is there not to like about the if I would have told you going into this offseason, what do you not like about the Kansas City offense? 99% of people would have said their wide receiving group. And for very good reason. You have a bunch of unproven wide receivers that there's no clear alpha. They expected Kadarius Toney to come in and just be that guy, and he's not. He's not proven that at all yet this season. He didn't prove it at all last season. He didn't prove it with the Giants. Kadarius Toney is a very explosive player, but he's not confident. You could see last night he's just not confident. Tried to catch with his body, not high pointing the football. It just after those first couple of drops, he just shut down. Now I'm not one to judge. I'm not saying I could go out there and be an NFL wide receiver, but this guy, he's getting paid to do this, right? This is his job. And I just don't think they're getting what they traded for. And I think that they may move on and they may try someone else. They may give Sky Moore more snaps. He had a couple drops last night. You know, the only bright spot that I really saw was Justin Watson. Justin Watson was there. I think he had a drop, maybe 2 drops, but he was the guy that Mahomes went to on third down situations. That's who I'm looking for, is Justin Watson as a pivot from Travis Kelce. I think ESPN has him listed as a wide receiver. I think he's more of a tight end archetype, but that's just my personal preference. Now let's move on to the other side of that game, the Detroit Lions. I don't know if anybody expected for David Montgomery to come out and get 21 carries. He had 21 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. His value skyrocketed, I believe. I think David Montgomery's value of where you drafted him, in the 7th round, 6th round, is you were happy with his performance. You were excited. Everyone expected Jahmyr Gibbs to come in and just be that guy, kind of like Kadarius Toney. And Gibbs had a good game. Don't get me wrong. He didn't play bad like Kadarius Toney played bad. Gibbs, 7 carries. No one expected Gibbs to only get 7 carries. And maybe that's what the OC meant when they said we're going to use him in ways that some people might not think we will. But he had 2 receptions for 18 yards. He did catch both of his targets. So, I mean, Gibbs is someone to watch long season. It's just if you invested a 3rd round pick with him, you weren't happy. You're not satisfied. You are a little nervous that the timeshare is a little bit more distance than what you thought. You didn't think that there was going to be that big of a gap between carries, between Montgomery and Gibbs. However, if you drafted Amon-Ra, which I did, you were happy. He had 9 targets, led the team in targets with 9, 6 catches for 71 yards and a touchdown. That's exactly what you want week 1 on a Thursday night game from your 1st or 2nd round pick. I got him in the 2nd round, pick number 3. That's exactly what you hope for. You know, I think that Thursday night games, there's so much hype around. The first week of Thursday night games is there's so much hype around football, and you're waiting and you're watching. You know, you drafted Mahomes, or you drafted Amon-Ra, or you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and you just want that explosion of points to come out of nowhere. You want to have a 30-point PPR game from Amon-Ra. You want to have a 35-point PPR game from Patrick Mahomes if you're in a 6-point touchdown league like we are. You want to have a 15-plus point night for Gibbs. That's what you are hoping for. But realistically, you have to understand most of these guys didn't play in the preseason. Mahomes played. Gibbs had a few snaps, maybe. I can't remember. I didn't watch the Lions preseason games. Amon-Ra didn't play. Goff, I can't remember if he played. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't watch any of the Lions preseason games. Point being, these guys were fresh. These guys were raw. Everyone is coming out. They're getting their first real game action. You have to temper your expectations a little bit. And I think I was tempering my expectations for Amon-Ra. I was like, okay, he's going to go out, maybe get, 6 catches, 70 yards, call it a night. I was expecting 13 points. He went out and scored a touchdown on 9 targets. You're excited, right? Gibbs, you had to have expected that. A rookie running back doesn't just come in and explode right away. The few that can are going to be like Bijan Robinson, the Ezekiel Elliott's, the Saquon Barkleys. That higher tier of running backs is where you're going to get that first game explosion. So I expect to see that from Bijan this week, but I didn't expect to see that from Jahmyr Gibbs. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Sunday slate. We're going to have a little Sunday preview, give you the over-under, give you my pick for who I think is going to win, give you a little breakdown of what is possible with these teams. All right, starting off, you got Houston traveling to Baltimore to face the Ravens. The over-under is 43.5, something you really want to see in fantasy. You got Houston as the 9.5 road dogs, 9.5 point road dogs, which is very viable. Like, that's probably where I would put my money if I was betting. Just as a safe pick on a parlay, you throw the Ravens in there. I don't see them losing this game to the Houston Texans. Their defense is young. It's raw. We'll get to see Will Anderson. But I just don't think that they're going to be able to hold Lamar and Mark Andrews, Dobbins, Zay Flowers. I don't think they're going to be able to hold those guys in check. Specifically, Mark Andrews. I think if you have Mark Andrews and he plays this week, he is listed as questionable. But if he plays this week, he's going to have a really good game. On the defense, if you have to start a defense, I would go Baltimore. They're not going to be available for you on the waiver wires. But if you want to throw them in DFS, they're probably expensive. I wouldn't. But if you do happen to just come across, someone dropped the defense to pick up Jaden Reed, or someone dropped the defense to pick up a tight end to replace Kelsey last night, and it happened to be Baltimore, I would pick them up and play them this week. Going to the other side of the ball, I don't want to start anyone from the Texans except Dameon Pierce. And even then, temper your expectations for them. I know we were just talking about tempering expectations. Baltimore defense is really good. Don't expect much out of Dameon Pierce. So, yeah, I don't expect much from Dameon Pierce. He'll probably come in and get you some points. I mean, he's the lone back. No one's going to come in and take his spot. He's going to get the bulk of the carries. He's going to get the goal line work. And if they do happen to score a few points, it's probably going to be to him. I don't see C.J. Stroud doing well through the air with his current wide receivers against his defense. I think it's going to be a Dameon Pierce game. Start him. Feel confident, but don't expect a real boom game from him. Next, we have Tampa Bay going to Minnesota to face the Vikings. Of course, start Jefferson, start Hawkinson, start Madison, start Kirk. Kirk was a really good value pick this year. I think he's going to have a really, really big year. But yeah, on the Buccaneers side of the ball, and back to just one note on the Vikings side, I wouldn't start Jordan Addison this week unless you have to. Unless you're in a deep league, I would hold Addison, wait. Remember, when Justin Jefferson broke out, it was week 3 and on. When he was the wide receiver number 1 for that team. So just hold Addison this week unless you have to. Like, if you're in a 10-team league, don't start Addison. If you have enough pivots in a 12-team league, don't start Addison. Hold him. I do think he's going to be a super, super value this year, though. On the other side of the ball, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the over-under for this game is 46 points, with the Vikings being the 5.5-point favorites. Don't start Baker. Start Mike Evans, start Chris Godwin, and start Rachaad White, and that's it. One thing I will say about this game, be on the lookout for Sean Tucker. I think this is a kid that has the ability to take over that backfield later on in the year. This dude was really, really good at Syracuse, and I think his game will translate really well with what the Buccaneers want to do with the football. And I think that he is just built for a workload. I don't think Rachaad White is built for a workload. So if you are in a deep league, stash Sean Tucker. And we got the Niners traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The over-under is 41.5. Pittsburgh side of the ball, you're starting Najee. You're watching what happens with him and Jaylen Warren. I like a sleeper start this week in George Pickens. I think he has the ability to score and get some deep plays, deep bombs, maybe score a long touchdown. Deontay Johnson is someone that I really want to start too. Of course, where you drafted him, you have to probably start him. Freiermuth, start him. Kenny Pickett, drop him. On the 49ers side, McCaffrey, start him. Ayuk, Debo, where you drafted him, you're going to have to start him. Kittle, Just keep an eye on that injury report. You don't know what's going to happen with him. He may not even play. If that's the case, upgrade your starts for McCaffrey, for Debo, for Brandon. Expect more out of them. Purdy, good streamer option if you don't have a quarterback. I would stream him against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, who I don't think is going to be very good this year. Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Over-under is 46, with the Jaguars being 4.5-point favorites. This is an interesting game. You're going to see a lot this game. You're going to see how does Tank Bigsby fare in the passing game, in the running game. Does he get the goal line carries? What is the split going to be like for Etienne and Bigsby? That's an interesting game. Calvin Ridley, steal in this draft. He's my steal of the year. I didn't get any shares of him, unfortunately, but I think that he is going to be a beast. I think drafting him where he was falling in the late third, some drafts I saw him go in the fourth round. Calvin Ridley is that dude, and trust me, I'm betting on him, and he is probably betting on him too. And here, Evan Ingram, another stardom. Christian Kirk, stardom. Zay Jones, I wouldn't start him this week. Lock in Trevor Lawrence. Dude's going to be a baller. Think he can win Most Improved Player this year. And maybe even be in contention for MVP. I mean, the dude is talented. Sunshine is talented. On the other side of the ball, if you have to start a running back, if you had Jonathan Taylor and he's out, hopefully you were able to pick up Deion Jackson and you can throw him in your lineup, or hopefully you have another pivot. If you drafted late, you should have not drafted him early. If you drafted early, you probably drafted him early. Yeah, try not to get confused with that. But if you have to start one, I would say Deion Jackson. Don't start Evan Hull. I don't think he's good. I don't think Evan Hull's good. Sorry, Evan. Wide receivers, start Michael Pittman where you drafted him. You have to start him, and that's it. Don't start any other wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. Don't start Anthony Richardson either. I don't think he is a viable start this week. I don't think he's going to be a viable start until midway through to late in the season when he finally figures it out. That's when I think he's going to be good. And he'll be a steal. He'll win people leagues this year. I think Anthony Richardson is a league winner. If you're streaming a quarterback, but you stashed Anthony Richardson, good luck. The Bengals travel to Cleveland to take on the Browns, over under 47.5. You got the Cincinnati Bengals minus 2-point favorites. This is projected by Vegas to be a very good game. I'm taking the Bengals here. Deshaun Watson, hopefully he can put it together this season. I want to see him succeed. I think he's a great quarterback. Amari Cooper, great offensive weapon, start him. Njoku, start him. Everybody on that Cleveland offense, you got the three you're starting. Watson, Chubb, Njoku, and Cooper. If you want to take a shot and start deep Donovan Peoples-Jones, do it. I think that's going to be – he's going to score this week on a long touchdown. I think he's going to have a good day against a lackluster Bengals secondary. Of course, Joe Burrow expected to play this weekend. He was injured. Joe Mixon, you're starting all these guys. Don't start a Bengals tight end. And you got the Arizona Cardinals traveling to Washington to take on the Commanders, over under 38, with the Washington Commanders being a minus 7-point home favorite. I don't want to talk about this game, but I will, just for y'all's fantasy relevance. Jahan Dotson, start him. Terry McLaurin, start him. Sam Howell, keep an eye on him. I think he's going to be a pretty good quarterback. He looked good in the preseason. Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. It's an interesting shakedown in that backfield. Antonio Gibson comes in, and he's going to be the guy they want to go to in passing situations. He's going to be, I think he's the more explosive runner. I think Brian Robinson is more of a traditional goal line type back where they're going to give it to him to get 3 yards, 4 yards. I don't see the explosivity out of Brian Robinson that I do in Antonio Gibson. The only thing is fumble issues with Antonio Gibson. Can he hold on to the football? That remains to be seen. He didn't show it in the preseason. He hasn't showed it at all in his career. That's going to be the determining factor on who gets the most work. On the Arizona side, and also I think Washington is the defense to stream this week. They weren't taken in a lot of drafts. Pick them up and stream them. That's going to be the play, I think. Arizona Cardinals, starting James Conner, starting Hollywood Brown, and that's it. Don't start anybody else. That's the only ones that I'm interested in. Maybe keep an eye on Josh Dobbs if you want to find a flyer. If you're in a super flex league and need to find a flyer, maybe Josh Dobbs in the long run. That's all I'm going to say about that game. The Tennessee Titans travel to New Orleans to take on Derek Carr and the Saints. This one is also interesting to me. You're going to see how DeAndre Hopkins fits in with the Tennessee offense. You're going to see Derrick Henry's workload, of course. How does Treylon Burks mesh with DeAndre Hopkins? Where does Ryan Tannehill go with the ball? Chig Okonkwo, who's a great streamer, I think, at tight end. I think he's going to have a sleeper year. He's going to finish. And it's not hard to finish top 10 at tight end in fantasy just because there's only about 4 or 5 guys that are solidified every year in the top 5, and then the rest are just so interchangeable. But I think he is a top 10 tight end. He's got big playability. The dude is just waiting to break out, and I think this is his year to do that. You have the Saints. On the Saints side of the ball, Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams will start at running back. Keep an eye on Kendre Miller. This is a dude I think they like a lot, and I think if Alvin Kamara continues his decline like he did last year, it's just been a steady decline of a career. He's still going to be a running back one when he comes out, where you drafted him, of course. But keep an eye on Kendre Miller. This is a very good guy who's going to run in between the tackles. He's going to get goal line work, most likely. Jamal Williams will get goal line work. This is just a weird backfield that they need to sort out. Just keep an eye on it. See who gets the bulk of the carries. See who gets the passing game work. But other than that, Michael Thomas, where you drafted him late, I don't think you have to start him this week. But I think he would be a good start outside of Chris Olave. Derek Carr, I think, finishes as a top 12 quarterback this year as well. So just keep an eye on Michael Thomas. Hopefully he plays. Hopefully he plays a full year. I really enjoy watching Michael Thomas. He just can't stay healthy. And then to round out the early games and to round out the breakdown for this show, we'll finish with the late slate tomorrow, and Sunday night and Monday night games tomorrow as well. We'll go. Carolina is traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. It's over under 39.5. I don't want to start anyone except Bijan. I really don't. Nobody but Bijan is who I really want to start in this game. You got Carolina starting a rookie quarterback with so many questions at wide receiver. Doesn't look like DJ Shark is going to play this week. Jonathan Mingo is someone to keep an eye on. I think he's poised for a big season with an aging Adam Thielen, and then a DJ Chark who can't stay healthy. Jonathan Mingo is going to end up being wide receiver number 1 on that team by a landslide. It's not going to be close at the end of the year. When you look at the stats, it's going to be Jonathan Mingo, everybody else. And then Miles Sanders is next, of course. It's going to be Jonathan Mingo, big gap, Miles Sanders, and the rest. Miles Sanders, start him. He's looking to be really good this year, poised to handle the workload. Chuba Hubbard is there. I don't think Chuba Hubbard is going to have a year. Just the concerns with Miles Sanders' health is where I'm at. I passed on him in drafts. As an Eagles fan, I know how good he is, how explosive he is. He just always has tweaks, always has lingering injuries. He's going to play a lot of games. He's just going to be held back by injuries. I think he has an opportunity in this game to really have a really, really good game, though, against mid-tiered Atlanta Falcons front. They do have Grady Jarrett and they do have Calais Campbell, so that's something to be wary of. But on the Falcons side, Bijan, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, of course, your must-starts. The passing volume just isn't going to be there for the other guys. Mac Hollins, no. I don't even think he should be rostered right now. But Cordero Patterson, keep an eye on him. I know that report was going around that they have their own chart spot called the J for Cordero Patterson, so he'll get probably some jet sweeps, some screen passes, some outside runs, pitches, things of that nature, I don't want to start him. So yeah, that runs out the early games. Hopefully that helps you guys make some decisions. I know I'm always looking for decisions to make. I'm very indecisive when it comes to things. So I know that everyone listening has checked their fantasy team at least 30 times since the game ended last night. That's not since you drafted, that's since the game ended last night. Now we're moving on to another segment I like to call Stash or Pass. Stash or Pass. And we're going to go over a couple guys here who are injured or out for an extended period this season, who may be on your waiver wire, who people just forgot about, that you can stash, put on your bench, put on your IR, and they'll end up hopefully having or not having a great end of the year. So here I got 5 names, and I'm going to let you know whether I think you should stash them or pass on them. Jameson Williams. He's suspended for the first 6 games of the season. Pass. Why do you say pass? He only scored 1 time last season when he came back from injury. He tore his ACL at Alabama. He just wasn't Goff's go-to guy. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now with the addition of Jahmyr Gibbs, you got another weapon. You got Sam Laporta out there. Watching the game last night, I do think there is room for him to come in and be the wide receiver number 2. It's just taking up a bench spot right now is just too vital when you're looking, when you're sorting, when we're collecting data, when we're collecting, okay, we're sorting who's going to be the guy and who's not going to be the guy. In all aspects, for all teams, he's just not a guy I want to keep on my roster right now, taking up a spot that is just unnecessary. I think he'll be there in 3 to 4 weeks when everything's kind of, the mean scores, the median scores are kind of start balancing out, and you start really understanding, okay, who's going to be the top 10 wide receivers and who's going to play, who's going to get targets. After about week 4, if he's still there, we'll revisit this conversation and see. But he was hurt. Let's not forget he got hurt in the preseason. He hurt his hamstring. And yes, he has time to heal, so that probably won't be a issue come week 7 whenever he's supposed to come back. But I just don't think he's a guy that I want taking up a roster spot right now, especially in deep leagues. Those roster spots are just too valuable to waste on a guy who's suspended. You can't throw him in your IR. So he's just wasting a spot, essentially, this early in the season. Another name, Kyler Murray. I think this is a guy you stash. I think you pick him up, put him on your IR, let him sit there for 4 weeks, and hopefully he comes back week 5. Now, there is a chance where he sits out 8. He sits out till week 8, week 9, and then comes back when he's fully healthy. But if you at this point, you've already drafted your quarterback, right? Say you have a Mahomes, or you have a Hurts, or even if you waited and got a Geno, or got a Kirk, or got a Dak Prescott, this is a guy that can come in and just have an explosive second half of the year. We've seen it before with he uses his legs. Now, the Cardinals are not a good team right now. Their core is bad. Their leading wide receiver, Hollywood Brown, of course, is a guy that you want to play, you want to start, you want to throw to, you want that connection, you want that deep ball threat. But Kyler's going to have to use his legs. The pocket's going to degrade fast. Their offensive line isn't very good. Kyler is a guy that's going to come in and give you win your weeks in weeks 10, 11, 12, and maybe even in the playoffs. Now, they're not going to win a lot of games as a team, but Kyler can be a league winner for you. Pick him up, stash him, and hope for the best. Hope he comes back early. Hope he comes back week 5. You never know. Jonathan Taylor. This is an interesting topic. It's the hot topic right now in the world of sports. Are they going to trade him? Are they going to keep him? They're not going to pay him. So if they don't pay him, he's not playing either way. Pass. Pass on him 1,000 times. And this may come back to bite me in the butt later on. I don't want him. I don't want no part of it. I don't want any part of that situation. I don't want any part of that just drama that's going on. I want people that are going to play. I want points. Jonathan Taylor isn't getting me any points right now. And he's not for the next 4 weeks. Because he's on the IR. Now, this conversation may change should he get traded. If he would have got traded to the Miami Dolphins last week, I would have said stash him. Pick him up in the 4th round. Pick him up in the 5th round. Stash him. I mean, on the Dolphins is crazy to even think about. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't even think they trade him. I don't think that happens at all. Anthony Richardson. I think you stash him. I talked about him a little bit earlier when we were doing the schedule preview. I think Anthony Richardson is another guy similar to Kyler Murray that can win you your league later on in the season. The difference is I think Anthony Richardson can break out sooner. I think Anthony Richardson has the ability to win and win a lot. Now, the inconsistency is a really major red flag, but I compare him to Justin Fields. Justin Fields was undrafted and sat on the waivers last year until week 8, week 9, if not later or earlier. I can't remember off the top of my head, but people were picking him up and he was winning people their leagues. And he was wildly inconsistent as a passer. But in fantasy, that doesn't really matter. If you can run and get 150 plus yards on the ground a game and score twice in the red zone rushing touchdowns, you're starting. You're starting on my team if you can do that. Now, I say stash him because I don't want to play him like that week 1 when early wins in fantasy are just so important. You need to win the first couple weeks if you want any chance at really competing, or at least in my league, that's the case. If you drop 3 in a row, it's really hard to battle back. Now, it's been done a few years ago. I went 0-4 and ended up winning the title, but it just makes it a lot harder to keep that disparity between you and the first place guy season long in competitive leagues. Cooper Kupp, pass on him. Now, this is on the case of he only misses 2 games, 3 games. If he misses 3 games and he was your first round pick, now let me backtrack. This is a pass if you drafted late or if you are a late draft. If you drafted within this last week, you should have passed on him to begin with. If that's the case and you pick him up in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, stash him for sure because he's not your wide receiver number 1, or he shouldn't be, right? That's a good pick, good value pick. He can come back week 4, week 5 and still be wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 on the year and win you your league. Now, I'm saying pass if he was drafted early. If you drafted him as your wide receiver 1, I would look to trade him because right now you have no other wide receivers to turn to. He was your go-to guy. He was a top 5 pick, top 7 pick in fantasy. I think you trade him, try to get value out of him. Someone's going to want to offer a lot for him. Maybe not, but if you can find a trade where you're getting someone like a Jalen Waddle in return, I do that trade in a heartbeat. If you're getting Jalen Waddle and say a lower tier running back, someone like Zach Charbonnet, or someone that maybe is splitting a backfield, maybe it is David Montgomery. If you can get like a Jalen Waddle, David Montgomery deal for Cooper Kupp, I personally would take that if you drafted him in the 1st round. Because at that point, you're getting value back, and the rest of your team should be solid enough to pick up the slack from Cooper, and that'll help you win a couple games early on this season. And then you can look to reassess your team later on. But I think if you drafted him early and have no pivots, this is a guy you look to trade and get some value back for. So I say stash and pass because it just depends on where you drafted and when you drafted, right? So that's our segment, stash or pass. This is something we're going to be doing probably once every couple weeks just after the season and the market, resettles and balances and we see who's there. Like we'll revisit Jameson Williams in a few weeks. We'll revisit Kyler Murray when we know more about how long he's going to be out. We'll revisit Jonathan Taylor if we find out he's for sure going to be traded or not. But yeah, I hope y'all like this segment. It's an interesting segment to say the least. I think that it's going to be fun to follow these guys. And to end this show, I want to start doing something weekly called DFS picks. I say like that's a groundbreaking thing. Yeah, I'm doing this new thing called DFS picks. No, but I do want to go over my value DFS picks, my lineup that I'm submitting, some of my starts that I think are are good for their value. If you play DraftKings, DFS, you get a roster. It's just like any other fantasy football roster. You fill it out with players from, usually it's just the early and afternoon games for the main slate, and you have a $50,000 budget, and you draft players based on the salary that they set. DraftKings sets it themselves, and you build a team, and hopefully you can win some money. So with that being said, I'm going to go over some guys that I think can win you some money. I got Trevor Lawrence against Indianapolis defense. I think he dots him up. I project him to go over 275 yards and probably 3 touchdowns. And at $6,500, that's a really, really good value for a quarterback. I mean, you're looking at, this is Jalen Hurts, 8,000, 7,500. I can't remember what he's at. I mean, yeah, you could take one of these guys, but you're going to sacrifice somewhere else in your roster. I think Trevor Lawrence is a guy that's great value this week. So pick him up, throw him in your DFS. My running back best pick for DFS this week is going to be Raheem Mostert. Yeah, he may split with Devon Achane. This is when Devon Achane was still questionable whenever I made this list. Now he was a full participant, and he is off the injury report. However, they're giving Mostert the ball. He's going to have 15 touches, more receptions. And at 5,400 on DraftKings, that's a steal. I mean, this is a guy that can come in and just be a top 5 running back on the week, and he's only valued at 5,400 on DraftKings. Put him in your lineup and see what you get. I mean, you can't get worse than 5,400 on a running back that's going to be running back 1 for their team week 1, right? Jeff Wilson is still on IR, so if he does split touches or lose touches, it's going to be to Devon Achane, and I don't think it's going to be that many week 1. I think Achane is still a little banged up. I think they're going to slowly ease him back in. But yeah, my wide receiver start of the week here is Jahan Dotson against an Arizona Cardinals defense who is awful. I think they're going to be the worst defense in the NFL this year, and Jahan Dotson is only 5,000. He's 5,000 on DraftKings. Terry McLaurin is a little banged up still, and I think watching preseason games, him and Sam Howell had a connection, and hearing the reports from camp that Jahan Dotson is poised for a great breakout. He's one of my breakout picks this year for fantasy. I wish I had him on more rosters than I do have him on, but I think Jahan Dotson kills it this week against the Cardinals defense rather. Another wide receiver that I'm looking at is Calvin Ridley at 6,500 on DraftKings. Cash in with the stack with Trevor Lawrence. He's poised for a big year. I think if you've watched any of the videos on Instagram, if you've watched any of the clips, camp reports, this dude is fast. His route running is elite. I think he's the best route runner in the NFL right now. People forget about him because of the gambling deal, but I'm putting him in my DraftKings, and I bet he's putting him in his own DraftKings as well. My tight end start is Chig Okonkwo. I think like I touched on earlier, I think he has potential to be a really breakout tight end this year, a top 10, top 7 tight end. And I think there's no better time to start than week 1. We talked about it earlier. Them against the New Orleans Saints is going to be an interesting game. And I think Chig Okonkwo scores this week. And I think he's valued at 3,800. So what I like to do in DraftKings on my own personal picks is I like to cheap out on defense and tight end and just go ham on running back and wide receiver. And in this case, I didn't even have to. On my picks, I think I still had 1,000 left over from all my picks just because the picks I wanted this week were so cheap. Like Chig Okonkwo at 3,800 is a really, really good value for a tight end that can have a 40-yard touchdown. And then going back around to the Cardinals and Commanders game, I want the Commanders defense at 2,800. They're going up against Josh Dobbs, who I think is a QB3 in the league at best. Like, he's a third quarterback on a depth chart anywhere else, and he's starting this week. Start him. Start the Commanders defense at 2,800. That is the biggest steal that you're going to get this season. And to end the show, I'm going to leave y'all with a little bonus here. my NFL or ESPN or sleeper platform fantasy start of the week is none other than Raheem Mostert. I think he's going to have a big game this week against the Chargers. And I think that he's going to have a really vintage Mostert week, but I only think it's going to be good for 1 week. I think he's going to give everything he has left in the tank this week. I hope he keeps his value all season. I really do. I like Raheem Mostert. He just can't stay healthy. Hasn't been able to stay healthy his whole career. But I think against the Chargers week 1 on a really high-powered offense, I think he's going to have a really great 20-plus point full PPR performance. So, yeah, that rounds out this show. Hope to see y'all again tomorrow. I'm gonna go over the rest of the afternoon games, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about UFC 293. We're gonna talk a little bit about Monday Night Football. Tomorrow's gonna be a more generalized sport approach. That's episode 1 of the Dog Media podcast, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys are here for the long haul. It's my first episode. I know we stumbled through it, but we got to the end. We're only going up from here. We're only going to get better. And go Eagles. I hope y'all guys have a great weekend. And football is back, baby. Let's go.